As mentioned, I'm Phil Lim from ACL, and we're happy that you have been able to take the time out of your day to join us for our session. I am super pleased to be presenting today with Leslie Marie from Sumitomo Rubber. Leslie comes all the way from South Africa to be speaking with us today, and he is the internal audit leader at Sumitomo Rubber, and he's been in various internal audit and risk management functions for the past 10 years across various organizations. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Leslie. Oh, actually, one more thing. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the channel. I will be monitoring that and asking Leslie those questions throughout the session. Thanks. Leslie, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. And also, hello to everyone listening in today. We're going to talk about how we introduce continuous monitoring at Sumitomo using ACL Essentials. So let's get right into it. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the company to give you a bit of context, and then a bit of country context that you might be wondering why someone from South Africa talking about essentials and data analytics. Then we're going to talk about our ERP and data environment for our organization specifically, our audit challenges, which I'm sure you'll all recognize, the solution that we found, the business case we had to make for the solution, and then the results. And included in the results is a live demonstration of some of what Essentials does in our environment. So firstly, let's give a bit of background about the company. Sumitomo Rubber South Africa is a component of Sumitomo Rubber Industries, which formed in 1909 in Japan. Worldwide, it has about 33,000 employees and is in automotive tires as well as industrial rubber products. For example, friction golf products are made by Sumitomo Rubber Industries. And group-wide revenues worldwide for the year 2015 was about $8 billion. This is just showing us where some of our manufacturing and sales operations are across the world. And in the time that this was put together, more operations opened up. In fact, something new just opened up in North America, in the state of New York, where Goodyear Dunlop tires became a wholly owned Sumitomo subsidiary. In terms of rankings, we rank between 5th or 6th in the tire manufacturers worldwide. So as you can see here, you've got the name brands that you may be aware of: Bridgestone, Michelin, Goodyear, Continental, and Sumitomo fits into that grouping. And of course, you'd, by sight, recognize our products. These are some of the offerings that we offer. Fitted also on many original equipment manufactured vehicles in North America and Europe as well. These are some of our operations around the world. And in red down here is our South Africa. On the bottom left-hand side is our South Africa operation. And in terms of our Africa operation, currently, at the end of 2015, at our production plant in Ladysmith in South Africa, we made about 12,000 tires a day. And by the end of 2017, we were making about 14,500 tires a day for a distribution into all of Africa and other parts of the world. In terms of our history in Africa, we started many, many years ago in Durban, South Africa, as the Dunlop Tire Manufacturing Company. Some of you will be aware of that name. And then in 2013, we were purchased by SRI of Japan. 2014, it was $91 million that was invested in expanding the production capabilities and capacity at our plant. And 2015, another $77 million, both of which are $1 billion in our currency. Sorry, R1 billion in our currency. And then, in terms of our corporate or company strategy, we aim to be the number one in Africa by 2020. And so our strategy is called One Easy Right, hashtag number one in Africa by 2020. And the reason it's called that is because, breaking it down, we want to be number one by making things easy, doing things right. And so that's why it's very simple to call it One Easy Right. The reason why I'm discussing this is this could actually be a corporate strategy for any organization out there. And so in terms of breaking it down further and making it easy to buy from us, we put the right systems and operations in place. And part of the right systems and operations is a continuous monitoring system. In terms of country context, as I mentioned earlier, why would someone from South Africa be speaking to you about continuous monitoring, data analytics, audit subjects? Well, there's a little bit of something interesting there. In terms of global competitiveness, South Africa doesn't rank very high at all. We made some improvement over the last year, and this is statistics and rankings published by the World Economic Forum in Davos. We were number 56, and we're number 49 in the world. United States is number 3 in the world, and Canada is number 15 in the world. So we can't really teach anybody much about competitiveness. We do have a program in South Africa to increase our competitive ranking. The official name is called Let's Make South Africa Great Again.
Good one.
But in terms of our strength of our audit and reporting standards, Canada, same ranking by the World Economic Forum, ranks number 4 in the world. United States ranks number 23 in the world. But South Africa, believe it or not, ranks number 1 in the world. So there can be something that maybe we can learn from the way we're doing things in terms of our auditing and reporting standards in the country.
What do you think has driven, before you go on, Leslie, what do you think has driven the maturity of audit and risk management in South Africa? It's,
we've been doing it for quite a long time, and we have developed in our country what's regarded as a very, very good world standard for corporate governance. And that's the King Report on Corporate Governance. It's actually often cited and quoted in other publications worldwide. We're actually moving on to the 4th edition of the King standard that just released last week, and it's world class in terms of governance. In fact, if you look down one level on this ranking, efficacy of corporate boards, we're actually number 3 on that as well. So in terms of making sure that we have good corporate governance and are keeping shareholders' equity in the company protected, we do quite well, and we actually set the standard. So that's quite good for the country. In terms of our ERP and our particular data environment in Sumitomo, we sit here in South Africa, down here, and our data sits in Malaysia. So our SAP server sits in Malaysia. For us to get access to our SAP data requires us to access the data in Malaysia. If we have to do anything that requires any amount of customization to that data, we often have to go through a third party, external service provider, to access the data and customize it. So it's very difficult for us and complicated to get our data and able to do something unique with it. So that complicates the situation somewhat. And many companies are now finding themselves in a situation where their data is sitting in the cloud and other environments and other systems. So how do you actually get the value and understand something of the data, especially if you're customizing it? Everybody's businesses are different, complex, and unique, and you need to want to be able to customize it to your environment. That's one thing. The other thing is SAP itself. SAP has a lot going on in it. And if anyone tells you that SAP is easy, it's easy to implement, it's easy to understand, they're lying to you. Because SAP is never vanilla. It's always, always, always complicated. It's never buy something off the shelf. So here's just an example, a baseline package for SAP. And that's some of the modules that run in SAP. It's very, very, very complicated. In fact, SAP at its core exists and works with tables, and those table names are in German. And the SAP is a German company. They haven't changed it. And people are expected to know that. They understand even German to understand the table. So it's a very good system, but it's quite complicated. It's like when your significant other changes your relationship status on Facebook. It's complicated. You know you're in for a world of hurt. And it's the same. It's the same with SAP. It's very complicated. When it comes to SAP, just to get standard reports out of SAP, it takes time and effort to extract the data. Also, it takes time and effort to extract the data. And last thing, this is very important. It takes time and effort to extract the data. And all that time and effort costs money because we're trying to win business. We're trying to remain competitive. Yet we're spending time trying to get information out of SAP, just standard reports. In terms of the highest risk areas, and I'm sure most businesses will agree with that, and for us as well, procure to pay, that entire process area, and the hire to retire process, that process area as well. It's very high risk, and we wanted to see if we could mitigate that risk in our organization. What are some of our audit challenges? And now, this is something that the audience listening in would readily agree with and understand. We want to get independent access to data. However, the gatekeepers of data, the IT and information security personnel, don't want anybody to access the data, and for good reason. So you've got everything flowing into this data warehouse, ERP system, all other systems. And the IT man in this scenario, we can call him Kurt, he's like, no one's touching my data. His job is to protect that data. And you can go up to him as much as you want and say, Kurt, we are on the same team. Kurt, we need this data. Kurt, we in this together. Kurt, can't we all get along? Kurt, kumbaya. It's not going to work because his job, he is rated on how he protects that data. And so getting independent access is what auditors want, but it's very difficult to get. And you can't really trust someone to be a go-between between IT and yourself as the internal auditor. So first of all, independent data access is a problem, it's a challenge. Second of all, we work on sample sets. We're human. There's only so much that we can do. We were at the drop in the ocean stage. SAP generates a mountain of data. Just to get to the next stage, the 1% rule is great. Then there's the 5% dream. You can tell we're auditors because we're dreaming about sample sets. But we'd love to get to a place where we can say that, hey, we looked at 5% of our data in totality. But really where you actually want to be, where auditors were many, many, many years ago, and where you want to get back to, is saying that you looked at everything. You looked at the entire population. And that's something that would be great to have. It would be tremendous. Another thing that's a challenge, so we don't have access to all the data, or you can't go to all the data, even if you do have access, is technical skills. Auditors are not coders. They're not developers. You may have information system auditors on your team. You may be an information system auditor, and that's all well and good. But really, auditors are not coders. They're not developers. And really getting down to the nuts and bolts of how an ERP system works, or how a data warehouse works, is sometimes out of our wheelhouse, or oftentimes out of our wheelhouse. So we don't have those technical skills. We might understand the concepts, but we don't have the technical skills to interrogate the entire data set. So that's another challenge. So what's our objective? We want independent access to data. We want something that's continuous, and we want something that gives you everything. And so we found a potential solution that gives us independent access that's continuous because we schedule it to run when you want it to run, and gives you access to the entire data population. Unlimited access, actually. What solution did we find? Well, with ACL software and ACL Essentials. ACL Analytics Exchange, ACL Direct Link. Now, ACL Direct Link is an SAP certified product that links directly into the SAP server and pulls information out. We purchased 6 ACL Essentials. I'll explain what that is later on in the presentation, which gave us also ACL visualizations, and we had that. We now could bypass Kurt, the IT head of security, and get direct access to our data. without having any issue with IT, because we didn't do anything to mess up the data in any way, shape, or form. With just direct access, and we were able to perform our audit tests and other tests that were valuable to the business as well. ACL Essentials Exchange gives us direct and independent data access. It helps us to look at the entire data population and 100% continuity, because we're scheduling it. It runs all the time. It runs on weekends. It runs on public or bank holidays. There's never an issue with that. And it allows us now to make sense of SAP. You can read it. You can see the information coming out. You don't need to be a developer or technical person to understand binary. You now can actually get a sense and get value out of it once you understand the data and you can read it. This is some of the ACL Essentials modules, and the ones that we ended up purchasing were accounts payable, the general ledger analysis, or general journal analysis, human resources, purchase order management, salaries and payroll, and vendor management. So in total, we have about 77 to 80 tests running in our environment on either a weekly or monthly basis. And then it's presented visually, which is great. No one wants to sit and look at spreadsheets after putting all of that in. You're getting dashboards. Dashboards for dirty data, as a colleague of mine likes to say.
So let's now, before you go on, I guess the question here would be, so is it your internal audit team that's using the results directly, or is that going to the business users in the various operational departments?
We never sold it as just an internal audit tool, because when we were analyzing it, we found that ACL, because they've been consulting with Fortune 500 companies for years and years now, really started to understand business processes. So they took their knowledge and understood what went wrong in business processes, and it seemed to be the same thing across different industries. For example, if you're making a duplicate payment, it's a problem regardless of what industry you are in. Using that knowledge, they came up with a solution that allows them to leverage their background knowledge of the ERP system, what goes wrong, and makes it simple and easy for easily understandable to business users. So we sold it to the business as a business tool. In fact, we have about 6 licenses in the company. 7. 2 sit with internal audit, 5 sit outside. We've got licenses in finance, we've got licenses in procurement, we've got licenses in the HR department sitting with payroll, and they actually go in and access ACL Essentials directly and get value out of it on an almost daily basis. So it's not, we're not using it we use it as an audit tool for our purposes, but it's really a business tool. And that's how the source of business, that's what continues to be being used by the business. In terms of the business case, because we loved it firstly when we saw it and we evaluated it as internal audit, risk management, we loved it. But then we had to actually sell it to the executive committee. And as any one of you listening in knows, that sometimes quite an uphill battle. So how did we make the business case? Well, a demonstration of what it can do, that's what we started off with, and that predictably and reliably wowed individuals. But then we needed to understand the cost benefit of putting it in. We did a proof of concept, and then we did a justification for budgeting for the full system. So in terms of the demonstration and user requirements, we put in ACL Analytics Exchange, direct link, and one component, accounts payable, and that covered the cost of the POC. And in that, we made sure that we had independent data access. IT department signed off on everything related to it. So in terms of IT protocols, our internal processes and policies and procedures, in terms of information security, it passed muster. We performed analysis on that, and we got our assurance out of the proof of concept.
For the IT protocol fitness, Leslie,
yes.
Did you run into any challenges in that conversation with IT, and what were some of their concerns, and how did you address them?
They of course are the gatekeepers of the information in the company. Their issue was that data wouldn't leak it wouldn't go to unauthorized users, and it wouldn't mess up their information sitting in SAP and their standard reporting that's coming out of SAP. And once all that was agreed to, and they saw what the system would do, the big thing was that Direct Link is SAP certified, ACL Direct Link. So you got SAP saying, we give them the stamp of approval to use. You can plug and play. In fact, it was a plug and play for Direct Link. You send the file over to Malaysia, they install it on the SAP server, and that was done. So it's certified by SAP. So that was a big thing that allowed them to have comfort that we weren't going to cause issues with the company's data. And also any questions that they had, we had deep technical discussions with ACL consultants in South Africa, and everyone was happy with putting the solution in. And in fact, it wasn't a new solution; it was a tried and tested and proven solution that was being used in Fortune 500 companies for many years, and so that also helped as well. Then we looked at we did the POC, but then we also looked at cost justification across 5 different areas. And we wanted to improve our control environment in the company. We wanted to enable management to make decisions and have reports based on exceptions, because you want to know what's going wrong in your business, and you want to potentially bring down your external audit fees. So external audit, internal audit, finance, procurement, and HR and payroll. I'm going to go into each one in a little bit more detail. So in terms of external audits, we were told that if we put ACL in, we would realize a significant cost benefit to the audit fee, and that came directly from KPMG, and it realized about $7,000 off our audit fee. In completely unrelated news, this individual no longer works at KPMG. In terms of internal audit, first of all, it gave us 100% coverage, which we, as I said earlier, dreamed about. Took away judgmental sampling completely. You could now focus on real problems where issues lay, as opposed to best guesses based on historical data, and also researching what's out there in terms of risk. But this is really what's happening in your business. You're not being subjective anymore, and as I said, not assuming. And it was really 3 auditors for the price of 1, because it was working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It doesn't take Christmas off. It's always on. And the price of 1 person a year would be about $25,000.
So I've got a question for you, Leslie, around this process. Now, how do you manage that communication with the business? When you identify issues, are they the ones that identify the issues first? And when they identify the issues, how do they raise that to you, or do you find them independently, or how does that communication process work?
It's a combination. Sometimes I might be looking at a particular test in a module that's more audit leaning. The entire module is available to the business unit, but it's more audit leaning, so I might, or my team might prompt that. But oftentimes it's the business that feedback, because we have regular feedback sessions, and the business feedback, saying, for example, one of my favorite tests in ACL, I'll mention it a bit more when looking at the visualization. It's called material price difference, where you look at the same material purchased from the same vendor within a predetermined period of time, 7 days, 14 days, a month. You should pay around about the same amount of money for it. And yet we found, when we put ACL in, we found some quite material price differences. Vendors know that you can't go through the mountain of data in your system and see where there's issues, so they take chances. And we found them taking chances, and it actually helped us when we were doing supplier negotiations. We went back to people and so on and so forth, and suppliers. So that was actually came from the business, picking it up, the material prices. That's just one example. Another thing is, in our country, we have very, very strict overtime laws. In fact, lots of penalties and fines if people are working unauthorized overtime. So HR uses the payroll module to manage overtime, because it shows up as an exception. It's graphical, and that's actually discussed at a very high level at the plant management committee meetings. It's brought up. It's actually a control built into the risk register for them, monitoring by ACL of overtime usage. So the business uses it. Sometimes more than you could say sometimes we use it.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah. In terms of procurement and human resources, we calculated the time it would take to perform the test or analytics manually. We applied an average rate of pay. We then annualized the figure. And then we added in external consulting costs for development of reports. As I said earlier, we'd have to use a third party to get specialized customized reports out of SAP. And then for procurement, we worked out about $20,000 in year one, $10,000 a year, excuse me, after that. And it's HR about $13,000 a year. And the result was it was approved because it just made sense to not spend all that time, effort, energy, all that opportunity cost, and all the cost of reviewing those reports and trying to get it from Excel into graphs and charts. And as you know, if you look at auditing G tags for user developed applications, which are Excel spreadsheets, very advanced ones, you've got to audit them as well. All of that goes out the window. You don't have to worry about it because ACL plugs directly into your system independently, and it gives you real data that you don't have to worry about the veracity of it and integrity of it. There wasn't really any major project challenges. It was quite easy to implement, as you know, ACL has been doing it for many years. Direct link, as I said, was plug and play. Bandwidth limitations were not a factor because it works on the server and brings exceptions through. And then we use ACL Essentials. In terms of Essentials, it doesn't just work on SAP. It also works across various different ERP applications: Oracle, PeopleSoft, JDE, Lawson, Microsoft Dynamics. So what I want to do now is I wanted to go into a bit of a live demo just to show you a bit of what we could do in the system. So I'm going to jump right in here. This is the screen that would meet you when you're going into the different modules. So I'm not going to accounts payable. Okay, and I'm going to go straight into a visualization or test. This is called duplicate payments by payment value and employee. Now, very important duplicate payments. We want to understand how that works. Let's go in and look at it. Okay, so as an auditor, this is your life spreadsheet. You can take these information out of there. You can put it into, as I said, different, more advanced, macro-driven spreadsheets. You can do charts on that. You know, if you've got all the time in the world, you can, and also hope your formulas don't get messed up and something can go wrong along the way, that your linkages between different worksheets and workbooks work. You could do that, or you could do this. You could immediately have a visualization. Now, this visualization, you don't have to worry about the table. That's the data. That's the exception. So first of all, you've taken your massive amount of SAP data and just brought it down to the level of exception. Just what can go wrong. That's what you're focusing on. You're now sitting on just the what can go wrong. You don't have to worry about all the stuff that's going right. Then you're now sitting with your exception. You immediately see that you've got a problem here with duplicate payments. There's someone that's making 40% of the duplicate payments is coming from one person, who's named Candace Cunningham. Now, Candace Cunningham has an alliterative name, CC. And if a lifetime of reading comic books have taught me anything, it's that people like Peter Parker and Lois Lane have something to hide. So I think that Candace potentially has something to hide. So I'm going to now, on table view or Excel, I can't do anything more than this. But now, because it's dynamic, I'm going to drill down. And now I've gone and I've drilled down onto just Candace's exceptions. And I can look at that in more detail. One thing I find is here, immediately you see that, okay, more end, that seems to be a valid duplicate payment. It seems in the same date for the same amount. But the one about it, Betting World, it just seems to be there by itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a filter here. I'm going to see what's this Betting World all about. And I try imagine doing this with Excel or even Access database. I'm going to go, okay, Betting World. There we go, Betting World. I'm applying a filter to that. Okay, now it's dynamic, it adjusts. It just now filters onto betting world. It still shows me that one. But remember, I have selected Candice and drilled down on her data. If I now remove the filter on Candice, more information about betting world. As I go back to the original visualization, it's dynamic, it's adapted, it's adjusted. It's not just Candice that we have a problem with, it's also Robert Hewitt that we have a problem with. He's also making payments, duplicate payments. So he's made a duplicate payment. Now he's in cahoots with Candice, or he's doing it on his own, or we don't know. But what we do know is we probably not ever have caught out Robert Hewitt because of our way of doing internal audit, based on best guesses, historical data, and our biases come into it. Because we thought she had a literative name, we would have just focused on her. But yet there's someone else involved in this as well. So this shows you the value and the visualization of data and how you can interact with it. It shows you the value and how easy it is for business unit leaders to interact as well. So I'm gonna go out of this one and I'll go to the next one on accounts payable. Okay, so duplicate payments counts by user. So this is actually counting the amount of duplicate payments. Again, we go straight to the table view. Again, you can work with it a lot, but here we've got a dynamic dashboard. And again, we see Candice Cunningham, big problem. You drill down, again, you can't do that with normal just spreadsheet data. And you now presented with her exception. And I'm going to try and understand this better because it's 494 records. So a bar graph isn't going to help me much. So I'm going to understand who are these vendors that she's making duplicate payments to. So I'm going to go to a pie chart. I'm going to ask for the vendor name. I can do a sum. I'm going to do a sum of the payment amount. And I'm going to say apply. Okay, so there's quite a lot of vendors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the legend. Okay. We make it into a donut because who doesn't like donuts? And there we go. So 33% of these duplicate payments is going to one. So now you're knowing already where to focus your efforts. In terms of materiality, in terms of everyone's constrained in audit, in terms of resources, now you know where to focus your efforts. 33% are going to Barco investments. Let's find more about Barco investments. Keep in mind, you've already drilled down one level. Now you drill down another level. You can try and imagine again doing that in Excel. So we're drilling down another level. Now we're trying to find Barco investments. But remember something, we selected Candice Cunningham. I want to find out now if there's anybody else involved in this Barco investment scheme. I'm going to deselect the filter on Candice Cunningham. And then I'm going to go back to my original graph, or my original visualization. Sorry, it's not a graph. Pie chart. Sorry, not pie chart? Yeah. It's not just Candice Cunningham. It's Robert Hewitt again. But here's someone else. Wesley Gonzalez has also been making duplicate payments to Barco Investments. Now, once you've established these tests that you want to put in place, once you've done these visualizations, you just drop down here and save them. And that's it. They run on schedule. You don't ever have to worry. Not that it was too much of an effort to do this graph. You saw it took me a minute. But once I've done it, I can now monitor Barco Investments until the time we get rid of Barco Investments, because obviously they're paying off our entire accounts payable department to duplicate payments. So immediately you can see the value, and this can be monitored. You can go over to the finance department and say, okay, fine, these are the three culprits in your accounts payable department. You can now use ACL to monitor them, and you can use ACL to monitor the vendors that you might have a problem with. So that's just that one on accounts payable.
Leslie, how often in your organization do you run? What's the frequency of the analytics run?
Some run once a week, and some run once a month. For example, the one I spoke about earlier, it's my favorite, so I think about it a lot. I think it's when I saw it, it was wow, gee whiz kind of thing. The material price difference one, it looks at the week's purchases. And because there are a lot of purchases, going to a month's purchases was very difficult. It looks at the week's purchases. Where, for example, a vendor management test runs once a month, because you're not really adding so many vendors in a week, but you might add or delete or edit vendors in a month's time, in a month period. So depending on when it's being used and how often it's being used, that determines the frequency of the reporting. But it's very easy to use because you only, as I said, only looking at exceptions. So you're only focusing on what potentially goes wrong, and then you're drilling down based on your materiality. What I wanted to show you, this is just cool. Test 4. These are just purchase orders greater than $500,000. You can do this in Excel, but you're going to set up conditional formatting. And again, you've got to make sure your worksheet is right. You've got to make sure your formulas are right. This is just there. And you can just scroll through it and just do a sense check. Oh, okay, that seems about right. Okay, fine. Wow, why are we paying Better Build $5 million for what did Better Build do? We're not building anything. So it's a good sense check, and it's simple. It's easy, it's visual. That's particularly why I like that. And the one that I really like, in terms of accounts payable, the one here, PO created more than 3 months after invoice date. This is a bubble chart. And this is, I'm going to explain something that's very complicated, this bubble chart. The bigger the bubble, the bigger the problem. That's basically what it comes down to. All your executives can understand that, every single one of them. So if you click on that, you should see a lot of purchase orders that were created a long time after the day you did your invoicing. So visual, easy to use, and that's what I wanted to show in accounts payable. Just something else that I wanted to speak about. If we go here to,
I've got a question actually from the audience. Once the issues are identified, what's next? How does it get forwarded to the right people for correction? So I think this sort of talks to the point that we were talking about before, is how do you manage that conversation with the business process owners?
Okay. Maybe, I don't know if you want to speak to everyone about GRC flow and how you handle it in Results Manager. Mm-hmm. We haven't personally gone the GRC route yet. We still handle it manually. So if we have a discussion around some exceptions, exceptions are forwarded to us automatically by the system. We have sit-down discussions with management. But ACL's GRC platform, which comes with Results Manager, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, I've only seen demonstrations of the product, allows you to save the exception in Results Manager and assign it to a person in the organization for follow-up.
Yep, that's
right?
Totally correct. That's our Results Manager component. So, yeah, you can manage that conversation manually, like you have at Sumitomo. But we could have an automated system where that happens as well. And the other point to notice here is that it's not really the audit team, not your team, responsible for doing the initial review most of the time, Leslie. It's the business process owners, right?
Yeah, it's the business, and that's great because we've got a system that actually adds value to the business, and that's great for audits. I mean, oftentimes you're seen as the bad guy, potentially, maybe the policeman. But
yeah, and ultimately, I understand that you didn't pay for the system.
Yeah, we didn't pay for it. IT paid for it, so we love it. It comes directly out of the IT budget. I don't know how that happened. I'm just happy for that, and I continue to be happy for that. But it came directly out of the IT budget. It comes out of the IT budget, directly helps everyone, us and the business. It's a win-win-win situation. I just want to show a few things in HR. I could talk to some of these tests. I'm not going to actually show the. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, not on HR. Vendor management. So this is the problem with the HR data. Okay, I'm going to talk about three of these tests. Test 3, match vendors with the same address. Test 4, match vendors with the same phone numbers, and test 6, vendors with the same bank accounts. That's very powerful tests that are running. You're looking at multiple tables in SAP that are coming together in a visual way and are showing you where there's potential issues with your vendors, ghost vendors, duplicate vendors, all of that. And it's a very, very clever thing to do. Look at someone with the same phone number, or look at employee and vendor bank accounts. You're accessing HR data, you're accessing vendor data, master data, and looking at it together to see there's an issue. And it's a very powerful test to do, and it makes it very easy in ACL Essentials.
And Leslie, I've got another question here. It's about false positives.
Sure.
Well, first of all, how many false positives and what percentage do you experience, and how do you deal with the reduction of the false positives, and in general, what's the volume of the transactions that you're identifying through the exception management?
I wouldn't be able to tell you offhand the volume of the transactions that we're identifying. As I said, it's a subset of the data, the exceptions, what's gone wrong in terms of the total data set. But in terms of identifying what's gone wrong, it's a relatively easy process, and sitting down with the business, helping them understand, or sometimes them helping us understand. We're getting to know the business processes better in that context. Does that answer the question, Phil?
Yeah, for the latter part. But what about false positives? I mean, have you let's say we do find vendors with phone numbers that match the same, or duplicate invoices or POs that have gone out, but there's a legitimate business reason for that because the process is the way that it is. How do you manage that?
When we put the system in, we had false positives at first, but because ACL has been doing this for a very long time and has worked across many different corporates and companies and is doing these tests for many years, we were able to reduce that almost overnight. I'm not making this up or joking, but it was very, very quickly when we bled the false positives out of the system. Now we're getting real actionable data. I would say there's an insignificant percentage of that is false positives because of the amount of work going into the system already. Just plugging and playing it into your system, putting it in immediately, you get a lot of good data out. You will get some false positives in the beginning, but it is customized to your environment. Just one example, we bring in tires from our sister companies in other parts of the world, and the way we brought it in is different from other companies. So that was throwing up false positives in terms of timing of purchase orders and invoicing. But once that was customized to our environment, and ACL doesn't, or at least our ACL consultants don't charge you any extra for that. Buying Essentials allows you to customize it to your environment. And that bled the false positives out of the system.
Great. There's another question here about the reporting columns and the data. How was it that it was actually accurately captured and mapped to your ERP? Was IT involved in doing the mapping, or was that already provided to you?
Okay. Our ACL consultants here in South Africa included on their team are SAP experts. I said that SAP is in German and is German names and everything. They speak SAP. In fact, we hit a potential roadblock where we were trying to extract the payroll data because SAP encrypts payroll data. And we locked down the payroll. It's locked down in SAP. Now, ACL had to access that. And our consultants found a way to access it that both our internal IT department and our very highly paid third-party consultants who used to access our data didn't know. So that's what you find. You get experts in ERP systems at ACL. They've been using it for many years, and they were able to map everything, map the tables, and get the information out very quickly because they've done it many times before.
So in other words, the mapping wasn't done by your IT then. It was already.
No. Our IT basically just provided the VPN access, and time to download some of the initial reports, which are quite large. They provision that, and a place to work for the consultants. That's basically it.
Cool. So the time between signing the paper and getting started with the project and the time you started getting results was how long?
A month. Because the blueprinting process is quite detailed.
Great.
Getting everyone to sign off on it. The business signed off, IT signed off, the audit signed off. And so once that was done, the blueprint, you understand exactly the scope of what we were doing. It's very much a plug and play exercise after that. Putting ACL Essentials in and getting the benefit out of it after about a month. And that includes bleeding a lot of the false positives out of the system.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. I just want to show two things here on the general ledger. General ledger test 6, or general journal. General journal created and approved by the same user. So if I go in there, this is in table format. I'm going to add a visualization. Go for a pie chart. I want to go username. Some amount. Okay. So now we find that we've got 71%. Someone named Wendy Gonzalez. Now you remember on the other side we had a Wesley Gonzalez. So we duplicate payments. So we've got some kind of family business here. Husband and wife team or brother and sister that are in the business. And 71% of the data of the created and approved by Wendy Gonzalez. Now if you want to look at the number in a number of records that she did, or a number, that's 2.3 million. 96% of them in count and in value were done by Wendy Gonzalez. And just one more here. GJ test 12, frequently reversed general journals.
Now, Leslie, what you're showing us now, is this running in the cloud, or would this be in your organization's environment?
No, this is in the cloud. This is off Amazon Web Services. So, yeah.
But in your case, though, at Sumitomo, do you have your analytics exchange and server running within your firewalls and
yes,
is any of your data going into the cloud? Is the question.
No, none of our data is going into the cloud. Our SAP server sits in the data center in Malaysia, and we've got an ACL Exchange server sitting on premise.
I see. Great.
Okay, something here. Okay, all right. So the x-axis, company name, and the y-axis. Sorry, oh, sorry, facing the wrong chart. There we go. Company name. I'm going to count, and I'm going to color my name. Okay, and we got the W Gonzalez again. Either Wendy or Wesley Gonzalez creating and then going back and reversing, putting stuff in and reversing it out of the system. Maybe they came from Wells Fargo. Who knows? So that's just basically a small subset of the functionality. I mean, I've showed you just two tests of two modules, and I spoke about one other module. There's, as I said, 77 to 80 tests running our environment across 6 modules, and the value is significant to us as Sumitomo Rubber. So if I could go back to my presentation, very importantly, to say thank you and welcome your questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions here, Leslie. Now, you were talking about how you're monitoring the pricing changes from vendors. When you dug into that, what did you find was the root cause of those pricing changes? Was it something system oriented, or was it something that the vendors were actually fraudulently providing, or what was the root cause?
Okay, to answer that question, to put it in context, I can give you a little bit of background here. Back on this. Okay. We've got a bit of problem with corruption in our country. We rank quite high in terms of corruption, diversion of public funds, and so on and so forth. So people are going to try, and vendors did try, because prior to ACL, if you look at a mountain of data, you're not particularly going to pick that up. Whether or not we didn't pick up any collusion with our buying system, but we did pick up that you're looking at something over a relatively short period of time, you will see significant differences. So we had vendors trying their luck, so to speak, and we were able to tell them that we now have a system in place that picks up even the smallest differences, and they must now justify. So when we do pick up, or maybe should I say procurement picks up issues, they have ACL now to go back to them and say, okay, either you had foreign exchange difference, or there was a price increase that we didn't know about. Other than that, are we credited, or do we renegotiate our contract? And they actually went that hard line in some vendors.
Interesting. Cool. When you were evaluating the solution, were you put in touch with other customers and hear their experience as well? I mean, do you know how many modules of Essentials and Analytics Exchange are in place today?
Modules and other customers?
Yes. Okay. Did you talk to other customers as part of your evaluation process?
I looked at other systems available out there. I also spoke to our third-party vendors who help us with our ERP system. They're quite a reputable, well-known, big listed company in our country. And I looked at other systems. I looked at what was available in terms of the system. I didn't particularly speak to other customers, but I was aware of who else in the country was using it. Blue chip listed companies. So that gave me a great deal, and ACL is a name brand across the world and in Fortune 500. So that gave me a great deal of confidence and at what I was seeing in terms of the demonstration, and then after that, the proof of concept was actually valid.
Great. I have another question from Leon Sheffield. How many users have access to run the analytics for your continuous monitoring platform? Are there different levels of access and abilities for the different users, or do they all have full access?
Okay, so for privacy reasons, we don't want one department to know that another department is having an issue. We lock it down per module across the different departments. We have about 7 users across the department. Now, I say users, I mean that people who can directly access and interact with the visualization. We bought 7 licenses for that. But anybody in the company can get the exception. So ACL server running in our on-premise environment works out the exception and outputs it to anyone you want it to in the organization for free, no cost, sends them the exception in an Excel format, worksheet format. Those with licenses don't have to worry about the Excel worksheet because they just go into their Essentials dashboard and they look at it and interact with it there. But everyone in the organization has access to everyone. So in finance, there's one person, the finance manager, who has access to the dashboarding, visualization, Essentials. We've got a license for her. But there's about 4 or 5 people who get the exception on a spreadsheet. and they can have discussions around that.
Great. So yeah, those spreadsheets can be routed on a test by test or module by module to the appropriate individual who will be responsible for them.
You set it up and you schedule it accordingly, and it just automatically goes out to people.
Then the next question is, do you capture the resolutions at all? And because that could be part of your well, first of all, I could see the potential for some of these continuous monitoring applications to be part of automating some of your SOX controls. So do you use these as part of that SOX testing? And secondly, how do you document then the capturing of the resolution of these issues?
No, definitely. You'd be stupid not to. I mean, it's a great tool that's showing you what's going wrong. Of course, you're going to use it in your internal control work. Of course, you're going to use it in your audit. Of course, you're going to use it for your SOX work, and we're also a SOX house as well. Capturing it is it's still done manually because we don't have the GRC component. As a phase 2, I would love to get the GRC component because it then starts to automate it. Because demonstrations that I've seen of hard work, you have the exception, you save it in Results Manager, you assign it to internal controls, that links to your risks that are sitting there as well, and that dynamically updates your risks on your risk register. So that's where we'd want to get in terms of automation of all of that. Right now it's manual. It happens as a normal audit process where you have the discussion, the closeout meetings, the resolution of an audit finding. It's an open finding until it's resolved, feedback, and so on and so forth. But it's still a manual process. It's reported on manually, but GRC is where the organization should go to automate that.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, Leslie, for your presentation today. And maybe after doing this presentation, we'll consider giving you some free licenses to ACL GRC Results Manager, but that's not for me to decide. I'm going to hand it to our WebEx producer. Thanks everyone on this session for taking the time to watch us today.